everybody. Welcome to some more Sporting Memories quiz this Saturday evening. We've started a theme recent weeks, haven't we, about looking at the different decades. So we're going to carry on that same theme. And tonight's quiz is looking at the 1980s. So if you were around during the 80s, or you remember people talking about it, or you've read about it, or it interests you, then we've got 15 questions on a variety of sports, obviously fairly well-known events from the 1980s. So we've had the 60s, done the 1970s, and today's the 1980s. So I'll do the questions this evening, same format as always. Tomorrow night we'll go through the questions with the answers and just a quick chat about the answers as well. So if you're ready to get going, here's number one. Quite an interesting one on boxing to begin with. So it reads like this. At which football ground in London did Barry McGuigan beat Eusebio Pedrosa to win the world featherweight title in 1985? So we're looking at what London ground, which well-known London football ground, did Barry McGuigan beat Eusebio Pedrosa to win the world featherweight title in 1985? Any ideas on that one? Do you remember watching it on TV? Do you remember reading about it afterwards? It was quite a momentous time, obviously, for Barry McGuigan and his career, winning that title. And so that's number one. Number two, moving on to track and field. Can you think of who won Great Britain's only gold medal at the World Athletics Championships in 1987, which were held in Rome that year? So I'll repeat that. Who won Great Britain's only gold medal at the World Athletics Championships back in 1987 when they were hosted in Rome? Can you think of stars of track and field that were at their height in the mid-late 80s? So that's number two. Number three, darts this time. Which player won the World Darts Championships in both 1982 and then again in 1989? So have a think back to some of the players that you probably grew up with, some of the big names of darts. Which one of them won the World Darts Championship in 82 and then he retook it again in 89? Any ideas on who that could have been? So that's the World Darts Championships for number three. Number four, which country hosted the Winter Olympics in 1988? Which country hosted the Winter Olympics back in 1988? Is there anything you can remember? Anybody's maybe a great performance, a memorable occasion that links you back to the Winter Olympics? Because obviously by then they were well covered on TV. And where were they held though? Back in 88. Okay, number five, horse racing. Which horse won the Grand National in 1986 before finishing fourth, then fourth again, then second in the next following 3 years? So I'll read that again. Which was the horse that won the Grand National in 86 and then it finished fourth the next year, fourth the year after, second the year after that in the next 3 years? Which horse was that? So we're looking for a very consistent finisher. Any famous names you can remember from the mid-80s and Grand National? That's number five. Number six is some golf. On which golf course did Nick Faldo win his first Open Championship title in 1987? Shooting 18 pars on the final day to beat Paul Azinger by one shot. So I'll repeat the question. On which golf course did Nick Faldo win his first Open Championship title in 87, shooting 18 pars on the final day to beat Paul Azinger by one shot? What was the course for the Open Championship. So that's number 6 for golf. So for all you golfing experts, I'm sure you got that one straight away. Number 7, moving back to some football this time. Who captained Italy to the World Cup final, well, to World Cup glory in 1982? Who captained Italy to World Cup success in 1982? So this is when Italy obviously won the World Cup. Who was their famous captain? Maybe you can remember a picture of him lifting the trophy. Maybe you're like me and you remember collecting the World Cup stickers during the 1982 World Cup, which I did, and maybe you collected him and put him in your sticker book. But who was their captain? There were many famous players in that team, obviously, but who wore the captain's armband in 1982? Number 8. Which American president officially opened the 1984 Los Angeles Olympic Games? So you've got to know a little bit of your presidential history this time. So we want the American president who officially was there to open the 1984 Los Angeles Olympic Summer Games. Now, obviously you've got to think back a little bit of time there, because 84, that's some years ago now. But who was the president in office who had that honour of opening up the Olympic Games? Number 9. Who won the ladies' singles most times at Wimbledon during the 1980s? So who won the ladies' singles titles the most times at Wimbledon during the 1980s? Can you think of a prolific winner? And if you can, did she win it mostly in the 80s? Who was that tennis player? That's number 9. Number 10, some more Olympics. Who won Great Britain's only gold medal at the 1980 Winter Olympics in Lake Placid, USA? Who won Great Britain's only gold at the 1980 Winter Olympics, Lake Placid, the USA? I know it's going back in time a bit, but it fits obviously in with our decade of the 1980s. Number 11 now, some football again. Now, going back to Ipswich. So Ipswich Town won the UEFA Cup in the 80-81 season, as you might remember. Their only European silverware to date. Which of their players scored 14 goals in the competition that season? So you could maybe remember the Ipswich Town team of the day. A lot of well-known names there. But which one of them scored 14 goals in that European competition to allow Ipswich to lift the UEFA Cup in the 1980-81 season? Who was that player? That's number 11. Number 12, snooker. Who was the winner of the 1986 World Snooker Championships at the Crucible after previously having never won a match at this tournament? Who was the winner of the 1986 World Snooker Championship at the Crucible, Sheffield, after previously having never won a match at this tournament? So who was that winner in 1986? Number 13, football again. How many times did Liverpool Football Club win the FA Cup in the 1980s? How many times did Liverpool Football Club win the FA Cup in the 1980s? So have a think about that. What years were they winning the FA Cup? Who were their scorers? Who did they beat? Maybe all these are little clues. Maybe you grew up in that era. Can you remember any of those games stand out in your mind? Maybe you're a Liverpool fan and you obviously already know those. Number 14, Formula 1. Which Brazilian Formula 1 driver won the World Championships 3 times during the 1980s? Which Brazilian Formula 1 driver won the World Championships 3 times during the 1980s? So first of all, can you think of any Brazilian drivers? And if you can, did they win specifically in the 80s? So what driver was that? And that's number 14. And finally, finishing on some cycling, number 15. Greg LeMond famously beat Laurent Fignon by 8 seconds to win the 1989 Tour de France. But how many tours did Greg LeMond win in total? I'll just recap that one. Greg LeMond famously beat Laurent Fignon by 8 seconds to win the 1989 Tour de France. But how many Tour de France's did Greg LeMond actually win in total? So that's number 15. So I hope you enjoy that little journey through the 80s. Obviously, I had to be selective because there's only 15 questions. So apologies if I've missed out your 1980s sporting moment. I hope it's given you a bit of time to have a think about some of those memories. And tomorrow I'll go through the answers. So hopefully that'll give you a bit of time to do some digging around and get your answers ready. So until tomorrow night, bye-bye for now.